how do we navigate all of the changes that come with radical growth? Fortune, fame, social challenges, all while staying true to ourselves.
The more work you do when nobody's watching will lead you to mastery when everybody's watching. Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. I've come to realize music is very primal. Like, we think we have these conscious decisions. Well, I like this because of that. No, I like this band because I like what their lyrics are, or whatever it is. It's something that hits us inside, and we can't even explain it. We've been counted out so many times that I've always felt that we're always trying to prove ourselves.
But you do get the adulation, like, oh my God, you do get that.
I've come to a place where I only focus on the controllables. Like, you can't control the outcome.
Deryck, I am really excited to have this conversation with you. I grew up counterculture, off access, really appreciating what you stand for and how you lived your life in so many ways is like, I mean, the title of your book is awesome. It
Thanks.
really speaks to it. You've really gone for it in life.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's the part that I hold like in the highest regard, is really going for it. So first, before we jump into it, thank you for coming in. And I just want to start like, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, we're on a final tour on our final album with Sum 41, and it's just been going great. This year's been the best year of Sum 41's career. We've had more success with the new record at radio than we've ever had. The tours are bigger, the shows are bigger, and I mean, just everything's been great. The reaction's been great. To see the emotion in people in the audience has been different than other shows. Like, normally our tours are, our shows are high energy, and the kids are going crazy, and there's a lot of mosh pits, and that's still happening, but you can just see people's I see so many more smiles than normal. And it's just like the entire show, these people, like the audience is just, they're just filled with so much emotion, but in a good way. And it's a positive emotion. And it's just like really enjoyable to be on stage and see that and watch people's faces.
There's a law of salience that's probably at play. And so what that means is that, when you buy like a new car, let's say you got like a Volkswagen VW Bug. Mm-hmm. Go back to like maybe when you were a kid and there was that car that you just bought, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden you look around, you're like, wow, there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of these things out here.
Yeah.
So when you are in a certain vehicle, then you tend to see that vehicle more often.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're happy, you tend to see smiles more often.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I tend to run positive most of the time. I'm usually pretty optimistic, positive, happy person. And I always have been, and my mom's the same way. We just kind of, and even the rest of a lot of people in my family, my grandparents are the same way. I grew up in a very happy household.
I can't wait to talk about this.
I mean, there's obviously a lot of, there is darkness in life, obviously, but I've always tended to focus on the positive, I guess, naturally.
All right, now you grew up in pretty tough ways. The neighborhood that you described was one of the lower income neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Drugs were a familiar part of your younger youth growing up.
Yes, yeah.
The way you described it in your book and the way I've understood you is like your narrative on top of the way you lived doesn't quite match. Mm-hmm. It's not that it doesn't match, it's yours, but you could have another narrative quite easily, which is like, look, life isn't fair, or like, I grew up and like it was hard and like I struggled, but you look back and you say, and even during that time, you didn't have the idea that you were being pulled down. Rather, maybe the conditions were just difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I would think. Like growing up, like I said, my mom was always really positive, always really close with my mom. I had a stepdad for a while that came into my life when I was about 2 years old, and my mom and him got married, and I assumed and I was told that he was my real dad. But he was a very dark person, abusive, and just angry all the time. There was nothing really that great about him.
BD.
Yeah. I never really enjoyed being around him. I always feared him. And then they got divorced when I was about 7. So once he was gone, I mean, all the darkness was gone. And my mom was such a great, positive person, and we became this little team at that point. You know, it was
I
just
loved
her and I.
that part of your story.
Yeah.
That was like, it was almost like I there was, what's the right thing here for me? There was like a craving for what you were describing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay, so I needed the hard thing to better understand how to be really close to mom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if needing is the right language there, but
I know what you're saying, though.
yeah, it was cool the way that you framed that. And I recognize that when, like, after something's difficult or hard, it's like, and then that thing resolves in some way. Oh, this is what it means. This is great.
Well, I mean, you have to go through the dark and tough situations to know how great the light and happy situations are. You know,
Is that a first principle for you?
it's just something that I've realized over time. I don't love being in those hard times, but I love having gone through the hard times. My life has always gotten better every time after something difficult. And when I'm in it, I always think this is the worst thing. I wish I wasn't going through this. And then when I'm on the other side of it, I look back and I go, wow, my life is actually better now today than it was before the hard thing.
Can you illustrate that through a story or an experience that you've had?
Okay, so the hardest thing I ever had to go through was, I had liver and kidney failure from years of alcohol abuse. And I ended up in the hospital. And I was in the hospital for a month, but then I was an outpatient for another few months. But all in all, it was a year and a half of major recovery. And it really felt like, because it was so long of recovery and it was so small, like the increments of getting better were so small, that it felt like I was never really getting better. And I thought that I maybe would never get better. And that whole period, and there's a lot in there that was, I came out of the hospital with severe nerve damage in my feet, and it was just so much pain. I couldn't stand for more than a couple seconds. I couldn't put my feet on the ground without feeling like I was stepping on hot coals. And I didn't know if I was ever going to get better. The doctors didn't know what was going to happen. There was just a wait and see. It could be permanent. It may go away. We just didn't know.
How did you manage that like in that moment? I imagine that my psychology would have been pretty hard on myself. Like, I really fucked myself up here.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I was so down on myself and so mad at myself.
Yeah.
And embarrassed. And it was also very public. I had gone down a really bad path in the public eye. And
did the world, sorry to interrupt you, did the world know that you were strung out?
Well, the world could see that I was in bad shape. It was all just alcohol for me. And, you can really see that in people's faces when you're, I was horribly bloated and
puffy.
Puffy faced.
Yeah. So the hard drugs came before that.
Way before that. I stopped doing drugs when I was like early 20s.
I thought you were going to say like 16. Yeah. So you were in the throes of it, as a teenager.
I never had a drug problem. We dabbled with drugs, all of us.
Yeah,
for fun. But
the first, like in your book, when you talked about the first party you went to, and you were with some older folks and some rock stars, and you and your younger friends were like, "Well, what do we do?"
Yeah,
I want to come back to like how you dealt with the resilient part of your story, like how you work through the body damage stuff. But go to this thing really quickly about you and your friends saying, what do we do when we go to party? If they say drugs, because I think this is really cool. There's a big insight here.
So we were about 16 years old, and we had started hanging out with some famous Canadian rock stars who seemed to take a liking to us. We were in Sum 41. Like, I started this band in the end of 10th grade, basically. And we had met some of our heroes by sneaking backstage and at one of their concerts.
You snuck backstage.
Yeah.
You were the one.
I snuck backstage and struck up a conversation, and it turned into this singer of this band coming to our show to check us out. And it was the very first Sum 41 show we ever played. We'd only been Sum 41 for a couple weeks. And I convinced him to come to our show. I mean, I didn't really have to convince him. I just said, hey, we're playing this show. Would you come? And he was like, yeah, I'll be there. And I thought, yeah, right. And I was like, well, how, he said, yeah, put me on the list. And I was like, what's a list? I don't even know what that means. I mean, and so I said, I go, what's a list? And he goes, here, here's my number, call me a couple days before the show and I'll come. So I did, and he showed up. And anyways, that started a friendship with some of these other rock star friends of his and the rest of Sum 41 guys. So we had been hanging out with him a little bit, mostly just he had let us come to some more shows of his band. And, we weren't like friends yet, but we're just kind of in his proximity a little bit. And he invited us to a party. He said, do you guys want to come? My drummer's having this loft party. And we were on our way on the train to his house.
No, you know how you didn't know what a list was?
What?
What's a loft party?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he just moved into like some big loft.
Oh, okay.
In an apartment building, and he was having a housewarming.
That's exactly
party.
what it sounds like. Yeah, okay, good.
He invited us down. We're on the train, and we knew that those guys did drugs like ecstasy and coke and stuff like that, and we didn't do anything like that. We barely drank at that point. In fact, I got my first drink from this guy at one of their shows that he had invited us to. I'd never had alcohol before, and he was just like, you guys want to do a shot? It was before they were going on stage. And we're like, a shot of what? And he goes, we're drinking Goldschlager. And because we always do a shot of Goldschlager before we go on, and we thought, these guys are so rocks. They're literally drinking gold. There's flakes of gold in this.
I mean, the young mind. Yeah.
They literally drink gold before they go on stage.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. And so we knew that we'd heard that they, he'd mentioned before that they party pretty hard and they do drugs and stuff like that. So we were on the train and we said to each other, we're making a pact. If they ask us to do any drugs, we're all going to say no, right? Everyone's like, absolutely. We're not doing ecstasy. Ecstasy was rather new. No, it wasn't brand new, but it was like, it wasn't as talked about not as common. We were at this party, and almost immediately he looked at us. He goes, hey, you guys want to do some ecstasy? And we all looked at each other, and we were like, remembering the pact that we had with ourselves. And we all looked each other in the eye and just went, yes. Yes, we do.
As one does.
Yeah.
And the reason I really appreciate that story is because you had a plan. Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty remarkable as a young person, that you rallied the team together. You all agreed on something. And there's something about how you work that comes forward in that story for me. Mm-hmm. Is that there was a plan, there was a thought about how you wanted to do it. You have the ability to think forward and use your imagination about what could be. Mm-hmm. And even so much as like, well, what's a list?
Yeah.
How do I navigate that? So you've got this ability to kind of plan in your mind. And then you threw it all out. Like you went with a gut, you went with the vibe, you went with something.
Yeah.
Even though that, you knew that this new drug called ecstasy, to you at least, was a big risk.
Yeah.
And you said, screw it, let's go. And that was probably the influence of the rock star vibe that was happening, at the party or whatever.
Yeah, we're hanging out with our heroes, bands that we'd been listening to. We were just in awe of this whole scene that we were now all of a sudden being allowed into.
So, okay. So when we just think about that story, and there was a connection to your friends, there was an agreement on a plan, there was your ability to see the future in the way that you wanted it, then there was the abandonment of that future for an experience, for connection with other people, a new group of people. And so all of that kind of not knowing you stepped into. And so when I think about your life arc, that feels like the first part of it. Mm-hmm. Had a plan, had some friends, had a plan, and then abandoned that plan for an experience. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that because I especially back then, you just kind of operate off instinct. And it, to a certain degree, even though we felt like this was not something we should be doing, and I can speak for myself, I wanted to be what those guys were from an earlier age, even before I even heard their bands. I grew up being obsessed with Nirvana and Guns N' Roses and the Doors and the Sex Pistols, and I wanted that life. I loved that Doors movie. I loved the whole Jim Morrison story. I remember, you romanticize that stuff when you're really young. You think it's so cool. Like, look at all that chaos and all the wildness of all this stuff. So that had already seeped into my subconscious already. So when I'm now stepping into this world. It's almost like, oh, here it is. Like, this is actually happening. And you don't have a conscious thought where you say, well, I always wanted to be like Jim Morrison and all those guys. It's just, it's somewhere in your subconscious at this point. So your instincts just kind of go towards it. You know, you have this thought like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but this is the life that I've been dreaming of.
Deryck, what you're speaking is so rich because you programmed exactly from all of the little micro thoughts like, look at Jim. Oh my God, maybe one day.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Like, I don't know, call it 1,000 times a day.
Absolutely.
Since you were a young kid.
Very young. And yeah, and you know, I wasn't sure how deep you want to go into all that, you know, how the mind works, the subconscious, and you like you said, you program yourself.
Yeah.
And how much we operate from our subconscious, right?
How do you do that now purposely? What are the thoughts that you spend most of your time with now?
Well, I do a lot of meditation.
Okay.
Now, a lot of gratitude practice. I have an eye on the future, but I'm much more in the present. I don't spend much time in memory lane. I think of the past fondly, but like I said, I don't really live there. I'm very, like we just did our last US show about a week ago, and I forget that we were just on tour because we're doing this now.
Yeah,
you know, like I'm on a book tour now. And
yeah.
It's once that show was done, it was like, okay, where am I tomorrow? You know, I'm not really thinking about, we just played our last show in the US today. I'm like, what's happening tomorrow? What time's my flight? Like, okay, cool. And where am I? Like, it's all about tomorrow. And
you don't abandon your history or your stories.
No, like I said, I think of the past fondly.
Right.
And I remember it vividly.
I think this is another process that you work from. And one of the reasons that you're probably alive today is that the way that you think about your future, the way that you think about your history is that you're able to see it in a way that serves you well. Mm-hmm. And the fondly is the word here, is that you're not looking back like, man, I screwed up, they were screwed up, why me? You're not doing that type of psychology. You're doing something different, which is like, hey, it was hard, and I am who I am today.
Yeah, I think I'm thankful for all of it. Yeah. I really am. I think, like I said, when I'm in those moments, when I was in that year and a half of recovery, coming out of the hospital of liver failure and nerve damage, and I had so many issues. I couldn't even play guitar. Like I couldn't form sentences. Like everything. When I went to pick up a guitar again, because I thought, you know, I can't walk, I can't do anything. I'm sort of bedridden. Well, at least I have my guitar. And I grabbed it, and I couldn't even form a chord. I was like, to just get my hand and then to switch it to another chord, it was literally learning guitar all over again. And that's when I really broke down. I had really just the shame, the embarrassment, the anger, the sadness, the guilt, the blame that I put on myself. All of that, you know, hit so hard, and it stuck for so long that no one would enjoy that period. You're never gonna in that moment say, I'm really glad this is happening. But I can sit here today and say, I'm so thankful that I went through that.
Why?
I would never take that away. I'm glad.
Why? Why are you thankful?
My life is so much better. Like, hard times create stronger people. And I feel so much stronger and better having gone through that. I'm just so glad it's over. And I don't want to go through it again.
How are you stronger?
Mentally, physically. I look at these things as like, and it can be physical or mental, but I look at these things as like the gift of injury, where you go through something, like let's just say I have injuries. I have a herniated disc, and it's acted up before, and every time it does, it's really painful, and I'll have other injuries in my ankle or my knee or something like that, and I do the physio. And what I mean by the gift of injury is that you go in and you build up all those muscles stronger than they were before, and all the surrounding muscles to be stronger than you ever were. So it's almost like, and if you didn't have those injuries, you wouldn't work on those things. You would just be fine and you wouldn't even think of it. So I've become physically stronger in every way because I have to work on all that stuff. Mentally stronger because I have to work on all that stuff. I don't want to drink again. You know, I'm 10 years sober. It's
huge congrats.
You have to just work on this stuff.
And it is dated. It's a day in, day out work.
Daily process for sure.
What do you know your triggers?
So I drank for 17 years total of my life. In 15 years of that, I never felt a pull towards it. I never felt an addiction towards it. I was always, we partied hard. Our band was always known as a hard partying band. We grew up, like I said, loving the Doors and Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses. And we just thought that's what you do when you make it. And that's what we did. And we had a great time. And we always just thought it was fun. Now, the last 2 years of my drinking, I started self-medicating for this back pain I was talking, and my injuries. And we were on tour. And it was the beginning of an album coming out. And I re-injured my back, and it was really bad. And I thought, I know what this is. If I go home to recover, it's like a 6-month recovery, and our album is about to come out. And the only way to promote the album is to go out on tour. So what I would notice is, we'd always have drinks sort of at the end of the night, right? Maybe a drink or two before the shows. We never really got drunk before the shows, but I'd always notice that after like a couple drinks, my back pain felt a lot better. Pop a couple Advil, I'm like, I don't feel anything. So I started saying, you know what, I can get through this tour if I just kind of ward off the pain with some Advil and some Jack Daniels, and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I'll deal with it, at the end.
Right.
Because we were and still are, this rolling machine of a band, right? You just go into, it's just cycle after cycle. You go on tour for 18 months, you come home, you make an album for 6 to 8 months, and then you're back on the road for 18 months, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats. And that's what we've been doing for 20-something years.
Yeah, and just for folks that might not, I'm not sure who these people would be that might not know your music, who are your people?
What do you mean my people?
Like, I recognize your music because I grew up in the surf culture, right? I'm from Southern California. Pennywise, was kind of a staple here. But who is your community? Who are the people that have the connection to what you're saying and how you're presenting, your lyrics and music?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we have our fan base.
That's what I mean. Like, how do you describe why they're attracted to you? Who are they?
I don't know.
That's interesting.
I've never really thought about why people like our band or what they like about it. I don't know. I mean, music's so... I've come to realize music is very primal. Like, we think we have these conscious decisions. Well, I like this because of that. I like this band because I like what their lyrics are, or whatever it is. But now that I've had 2 kids, and by 6, 8 months old, both of them, I'll watch them react to music that's being played. And sometimes they do react and sometimes they don't. They actually have a taste, but there'll be some music that comes on in the background where they just drop what they're doing, and they could be like on the couch and they can barely walk, and they sort of scurry off the couch and they have to go to the speaker and they start dancing because there's something that's primal about it. And I've come to realize that. And I used to think as a musician, you write a good song and that's why people like it or what. But I think music is way deeper than that. And it's something that hits us inside, and we can't even explain it.
Very cool. It's like candy to hear it from you, because you've lived it. You're a creator of it, and to hear you point to the primal piece. Mm-hmm. Is it primal when you're creating, or is it more intellectual and technical?
For me, I operate better when I just write music and just let it come out. I have tried to game the system and get intellectual about it and try to think about things, and that's when I don't do as well.
Are you talking about lyrics or notes?
Anything.
Both.
Just writing music in general. If I sit down and think about, what would be a really great song? What's in a great song? And I'm going to try to write a great song. That never works.
So how does it work for you?
It just comes out. It's a lot of times when you're not even thinking about writing a song, you're like, oh man, I got this thing coming to me. I'm like, I got to sing it into my phone or grab a guitar. And, if you're at home, great. I got guitars all over the place. Sometimes you're driving, and you got an idea. So they come in the middle of nowhere. A lot of times too, for me, and I think a lot of people are different, because some people say you should just write all the time. Write something every day and just keep that muscle going.
Yeah.
I don't work as well when I do that. I've tried doing that. I feel like I start getting stale. Like everything just I get bored of it and I'm not enjoying the writing. Whereas I find for me that I like the album cycle of 18 months or so where I don't write anything. I'm on tour. I'm just playing music for people. and I'm enjoying that process. And then I come home and I go, okay, I'm going to make an album. And I sit down and I just have all this creativity that's just been waiting to come out. And I just write music for weeks to a few months.
How long does it take to recover once you're done with tour?
For the longest time, and for most of our career, the day that I get home from the tour is the day I start writing the album.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like what you said. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate to spend some time with some artists, and when they get done with tour, they're like flat out exhausted. It sounds like you're doing something different, that you're managing your energy cycles where you have energy at the end of the tour.
I usually come home pretty inspired from what we have just done and what I've just witnessed. And
Open that up. This is. I think most people want what you just said, but don't know how to do it.
I get inspired and excited from the work, from doing the work, and that's the accomplishment to me. And of course you want it to do well. But I learned a while ago, and again, this is from experience. I don't necessarily call it age, because I think you can have the experience in a short amount of time. You can be younger with a lot of experience. You can be older with, it's just about the amount of experience that you have accumulated. For me, I've come to a place where I only focus on the controllables, and I want to focus, like, you can't control the outcome, but I can control my output. And that's where I put all my focus, and that's the accomplishment to me.
To you, so output is a controllable. When you double click on that, what are the things that are more specific that lead to a high output?
Well, for me, I love what I do, so that makes things easier. But I like to just put all my effort into things, which is why I'm making this record and this tour the final one, because I have other interests and things I would like to explore. And I don't necessarily know what that is yet, but I know, because of the way I work, and I'm so all in, that I can't do Sum 41 and something else. So I want to focus on this tour, making this the best tour we've ever done. And when it's over, I'm going to find something else that I find fulfilling and throw myself into that.
I'm so inspired by that thought. I feel like I'm doing 7 things reasonably well.
And that's how that usually works.
And I want to do 3 exceptionally well. Like, I'm really, but I don't know if I have the courage that you're talking about right now, which is to say no to some things that are good. Mm-hmm. They're really good. I find meaning and purpose and enjoyment in it, but spread thin, I know that there's a different level of art that I can get to that in my life, and I'm not.
I think there's always good ideas. There's always good things you could be doing, right? There's always like a bunch of stuff that is kind of cool. I think if you really want to master something, you have to dive in and focus on it. Yeah. That's at least that's how I know I operate.
When you think of the path of mastery, or when you think of mastery, I just kind of introduced the idea of a path, but when you think of mastery, where else do you go? What else comes or surrounds that concept for you?
To me, mastery would be hard work and repetition. I think it's about, the more work you do when nobody's watching will lead you to mastery when everybody's watching. Simply put, I would say, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Yeah.
That's how I operate.
Is it more of a destination or a process?
Oh, I think, obviously, like I said, you want what you do to do well, right? But you can really only focus on what you can control, and you can't control, especially when you're in something that deals with public consumption, right? They're going to choose what they want to choose, and there's other things that they might choose. You can't control other people to like what you put out, right? So you can really only focus on the process and what you put into it, and you can really only hope for the best.
Okay, so when you're creating, how much in your heart or in your mind are you thinking about the end user versus how to stitch note 1 and 2 together, or,
Well, the way I write music has always been about live performance. We've always been such a live band. And in the early days, those first 4 or 5, maybe even the first 6 records, I hated making the records because I hated being in the studio. I hated writing the songs. I just wanted to be back out on stage performing. So making records was the necessary evil to just get back out on the road.
You could have been a cover band, but that was not.
I don't think that would have really gotten us into arenas, though.
But that's not what you really wanted. You don't want to just play music.
No.
You wanted to create and share.
I do. So I always would say I hated the process of writing music, but I loved being the guy that wrote the songs.
That's so interesting.
But I hated the torture of getting to the finish line. But once they were done, I was like, fuck yeah, I wrote that. You know.
Which of the most popular songs do you look back at and be like, that was cool?
I look back at the whole catalog of music for the most part, and I still like it all. I mean, there are some songs, obviously, where I can go back and listen and go, maybe not that one so much. But, and maybe not full albums as much. But the songs that we play live and the songs that everybody knows or the songs that went to radio and stuff like that, I still love playing all those songs.
I really appreciate what you just said because I did a deep dive into Beethoven to try to understand his psychology. One of the greats. I don't know if you would
absolutely.
agree. Yeah. And come to find out, he had this radical fear of other people's opinions. So much so that he went deaf. I know you've got tinnitus. I have a little bit myself. But he went deaf or was going deaf. And he did 2 things that I think I would love for you to respond to see how you navigate these types of experiences. So as he was going deaf, he had this philosophy that I can't let anyone know somebody like me, somebody as extraordinary in music as me, is losing their sound, their hearing. So he pretended like he was aloof. He pretended like he was in this, what he would call his raptus, his creative genius orbit.
Sure.
But actually he couldn't hear what the person was saying to him. So that was part 1. And then part 2, when it became so bad, he had to go away. Yeah. And so he went and found himself a bit, a recluse. And that is actually in that dark place, if you will, that he had to drop out of society. And he drank more than any human should probably drink. Yeah. That when he was out there is where he came up with bum, 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 and kind of changed, his legacy, I think, from that point forward, number 5.
Yeah.
And so... And it's actually, I don't know if you know this, but that bum, 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 bum was him, maybe the folklore of it, banging on his piano because he couldn't hear the notes that he was making. And he was frustrated. And he went, wait, what was that? Mm-hmm. And then kind of put it into a piece. So what do you do when you feel unsettled about some part of your life, but people are asking to see that? He was unsettled about his hearing, and people were asking him to respond, but he couldn't hear it. So he was faking it.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that part of your life?
I think for me, I only ever do what I feel comfortable with. So I don't do anything for anybody else. If people are expecting something from me, and maybe that's just because I grew up loving punk rock music, and I'm just like, I just do what I want to do. So
there's a lyric that I wanted to just share with you.
Okay.
And I think it highlights exactly what you just said, but I want to get the tone of what you just said. But here's the lyric. I don't want to waste my time. Mm-hmm. Do you know where I'm going?
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my time, become another casualty of society. Mm-hmm. I'll never fall in line, become another victim of your conformity, and back down.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was like, oh, God, that speaks to me.
Yeah.
A lot. And so can you open up a little bit of your philosophy of punk music about that way of living? And then also maybe kind of use it in the context of this lyric.
There's this age-old question, it's like, what is punk? What is punk to you? The amount of times I've been asked that, you know, and there's elements to it that I think, obviously there's like an aesthetic that people associate with punk. But I think for me, it's always just been an attitude. It's a mindset. That's the way I've looked at it, is that I think I was attracted to it because of I'm going to do it on my own. I am my own boss, and I don't care about what anyone has to say. I don't even have to be that great at being a musician or anything, and still touch people, and still affect people. And it's just like, it's that you can do it too. Like, don't listen to authority that tells you can't do something or you're not good enough. And that's what that lyric meant to me. I don't want to waste my time and become another casualty of society. To me, it was all about that. It was just like, I want to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to listen to what people tell me I should do or I'm supposed to do that just fits in to what they think is acceptable.
So we're reading it kind of cold,
Yeah.
right? And it's a little sterile. And you said punk is an attitude. I go, yeah, I hear that. I feel that. And then when you are about, now let's go right into that moment where this lyric, let's just say, is going to come out of you.
Yeah.
And you use the word mindset. Okay. So what is the mindset that precedes you being able to contour the way that this sterile lyric on paper is going to come out? Can you talk about mindset, and can you talk about like what is a mindset first and foremost, and then what is the mindset to help you deliver what you really want to deliver?
That's kind of a tough question. Like, how do you define mindset? Because, everyone defines things differently. Like we were talking before about subconscious. Like, I feel like it comes from your subconscious. It comes from your programs, whether it's the programs you've programmed yourself or the things you've grown up with, or however you just get to where you are in your own mindset. And for me, at that time of writing Fat Lip and those lyrics, my mindset was a couple things. One was, so that was the last song that we wrote for that record. I was under a lot of pressure to write songs at that point because we were putting out a record and that we had deadlines, and I was just trying to write stuff quickly. So I wasn't really thinking too much about anything. And especially in those days, I didn't really think about anything. I was just writing music, whatever came out. And I always used to say, whatever a song is about, like whatever those lyrics are recorded, or whatever lyrics that are recorded for that song, that's just what I was thinking in that moment. If I had written that song 3 hours later or on another day, it might be about something completely different. And that's just where I was at that moment. And I think that song, Fat Lip, sums up what Sum 41 was all about in that moment. Fat Lip was like our mission statement. It's just, this is who we are. This is what we're all about. We're about fun. We're about not caring about what our parents want us to do, because we were teenagers. We just got out of high school.
Yeah.
And our parents did not want us to go into music. They wanted us to become they wanted us to go to college and just get a regular job and just...
You had a 52%
Yeah.
in school. So college,
Yeah.
there was a great line in your book. You're like, I did it. I got a 52%. I passed.
I just barely passed. That's all I needed to get, because my mom, she struggled so hard. She had me when she was 17, and she dropped out of school when she was in 10th grade to raise me. And then she married somebody who wasn't great. And then she left him and had to figure out, okay, now I got to take care of this kid and myself. And we moved a lot. And every time we moved was like a step up, but she struggled a lot for a lot of years and had to go back to school in her mid-20s, back to high school. And also still have a job, and then she eventually went to nursing school and became a nurse and got a good job. And like I said, every step was a step up. But she did not want me to quit school and go down that similar path.
Your mom had a spidey sense about Greg.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this part of your life, but...
Well, I wrote about it.
Yeah, so
I don't mind talking about it.
Writing and talking might be different.
It is different. I mean, all of it's hard, to be honest. But that's why we're here, right? We go through the hard things intentionally, because you get stronger on the other end.
I was really inspired that not only how you wrote it, but the fact that you did write it, because you didn't have to pull that forward.
No, and I wasn't sure that I was going to. When I started writing the book, I didn't know what I was going to write about. I didn't even really know what the story was. I actually thought my story was kind of boring. And I thought, why am I going to write a book? And I sat there the first day and I was like...
My story was boring, yeah.
I really thought that, because I was like, I didn't have a list of like stories that I was going to hit and moments. And I remember the past, like I said, but I don't live in the past. So... yes, I can go recall those memories, but they're not just like top of mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about that. And so I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to write about. And this thing hit me where I thought, for one, I thought my story was boring because I read a lot of those books either in high school or even while we were on tour. And, a lot of those kind of books are even more popular now. I read Motley Crue's The Dirt, Tommy Lee's book, Nikki Sixx's book, Ozzy Osbourne's book, Slash's book, Joe Perry's book, Steven Tyler's book. And I'm just thinking, like, now those are books. Like, those are wild stories. I got nothing on this. My story is so boring compared to this. I'm just a guy who wrote some songs and, had some success. Cool, I guess. But is it a book? I don't know. And then all of a sudden, I had this thought of, well, yeah, you know what? Like, you don't have a book like those guys. So don't try to make yourself sound cool. Just write the story. And if it's boring, it's boring. But it's your life. So just write your life. Like I said, I had this one rule of, like, don't try to make yourself sound cool. And that just freed me up to just write the story honestly. And as I got through the story, and I start getting to moments like our ex-manager, Greg, I pause and I'm like, oh, am I going to really go there? And I thought, I can't tell this stuff. This is something I thought I would bury forever and just, I don't even think about it because I had buried it for so long. And I thought, well, you know what? It's probably good for me to get it out on the page. And if I don't like it, I'll just take it out. But it's probably good for me to just write it out because I've never really dealt with what happened between him and I. And as I wrote it all out and I get on the other end of it, which, he was our manager, he was in my life for 9 years. So he's with us through all our first 4 albums. From 16 to 25 years old, he's a huge part of the whole thing. And when I got done writing that section, which is a few chapters, I thought, well, how do I take that out? It's so intertwined with everything, all the good and bad.
Yeah, very cool.
So I thought I'd be lying if I took all that bad stuff out. And I don't, everything I do, I try to do honestly.
I love that statement. I believe you too. And he was also, just to be clear for the listener, he was the person that gave you his number. Mm-hmm. You were the little kid. 16-year-old, bright-eyed, like, what happens backstage?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, kid, here's my number.
Here's my phone number.
I'll show up at your show.
Yeah. Which at the time I was like, this guy's the coolest guy on the planet. He's my idol. He's my hero. I love this band. I have his records. He's famous, and he's taking an interest in my band.
And when did you start to realize that he was actually taking an interest in you?
Well, like I said, we were taking a lot of drugs, going to raves, and all of us were. We went down that path of doing ecstasy, and he introduced us to going to raves in the 90s, and we're going to more parties, and we just started hanging out with that Toronto Canadian rock star scene. We became accepted, all of us, Sum 41 guys. And, as the years went on, we just became closer and closer. And I also was getting to a point where around 17 years old, I wasn't really getting along with my parents. My mom she wasn't married, but she was living with somebody, which was, my sort of pseudo new stepdad, and we weren't getting along very well. And I was spending less and less time at home, and I was couch surfing a lot and staying at Greg's house quite a bit. And our friendship just grew and grew and grew. And I couldn't deny that I'd never met anybody like him. Maybe there was a bit of, I was in awe of the whole thing, that I'm hanging out so much with this rock star and he's my idol and all that kind of stuff. But we had this great connection, and he was teaching me how to write songs better and introducing me to everything culturally and just all the things that you would learn from, say a father figure, how to shave and how to tie a tie and do all the, just things that you do at those ages. All of a sudden I'm like, hey, well, I'm starting to get facial hair. What do I do? And it's like, well, I'll just teach you how to shave. So, we just had this bond, and over time, I started to realize that, he seemed to be interested in me physically and sexually, and it kind of devolved into that sort of relationship for, don't know how long, but within a few months of it, I just felt like, okay, it was a little bit of an experiment. I'm not really that interested, but he was more, this, now that we've started this has to continue. Like, we're not stopping this now. Like, you don't just start and stop. I will say it is hard to talk about.
Well, yeah, how are you navigating this conversation right now?
You're watching somebody try to process this all for the first time.
Yeah.
Because the first step was writing about it. Mm-hmm. The next step was putting it out to the public. And now the next step is talking about it for the first time.
Yeah.
So this is all new to me.
And what are the emotions that you're navigating as you're doing it?
Trying to understand it. I don't want to say something. You want to be careful with your words because I don't want to mischaracterize something or I don't know, just say it the wrong way.
Again, your commitment to honesty.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I want it to be right and
You're not
correct.
trying to protect your image or protect him.
No. If there is anything that I feel like my subconscious goes to protect, it is him for some reason. And I catch myself internally going, why do you still try to protect him? Because that's what I did for so long.
In your mind, do you frame him as being an abuser and a child abuser?
I never did. I've never said that. I don't say that in the book. I haven't come to a place of labeling it. All I could do in the book was just talk about what happened. I'm going to tell the truth, and the reader can decide for themselves what they think it is. I've never felt like I knew what it was. And in the book, I think there's so much there, and I've been saying in a lot of interviews, like I've said it the best that I can say in the book. It's best to read the book rather than me stumble through it because it's still hard for me to process and put into words.
I'm more interested in how you're navigating it than the actual facts of it.
Sure.
When I read it, just for clarity, that clearly looks like a predatorial grooming process. And when you said no, he flexed another tactic to pull you back in. And like, it's really confusing as a kid. And that's what the abuse is.
I was going to say it's still confusing.
Yeah, but that's what abuse is.
Yeah.
And so cool, man, to keep processing it, to keep working through it. You will find it I think each time you wrestle with it, there's a little more clarity.
I think so, yeah.
There's a little more clarity. But I'm in awe of your courage and watching you try to find the right way to do it now. I think most of us are so overwhelmed by emotions, overwhelmed by what people think of us, we never get close to the truth. And I'm watching you go, it's really cool. Yeah.
It's difficult for sure, but like we've been talking about, I think I don't like to run away from difficult things.
I see.
I have those moments where I'll pull back and then I go, you know what? I always come back to this thing. The thing that's the hardest thing to do is probably the most important thing you can do. So I always remind myself that. Whenever I start pulling back, I'm like, no, you're pulling back because this is the most important thing you can do. So just do it. It's
and that's a feeling. That you're talking about an emotion at that point. And we had a legend on, Gabby Reese. So she was a good volleyball player and then world-class model. And she said, you will get taken down by the thing that you're willing to do anything for. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, I guess. I don't necessarily know what I would say to that, but yeah, I don't know.
Let's stay on the emotion piece.
Sure.
When you feel an emotion and you're retracting and recoiling from it, how do you do the gymnastics to come back in to that hard emotion, to that complicated mental thing that you're trying to sort out?
For me, when things are difficult or when I'm having these emotions, I really try to not act from emotion. I always try to take a step back and just say, okay, let's think about this for a second. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And what are my best options to deal with this?
Do you float above and watch it?
Yeah, a little bit. I try to take like an outside perspective and look at myself. Another great tactic or trick or whatever you want to call it is, I'm sure, I don't know how many people, I don't know how popular this is. It's not something I learned till not that long ago, but like the Solomon paradox, where you can give other people much better advice than you give yourself.
You can see it so clearly. Yeah.
So I try to do that, pull yourself out and give that person advice, not yourself, right?
Yeah,
like what would you tell somebody who's going through this thing? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I would say this and this and this. And you go, well, okay, then I just gave myself some pretty good advice there.
You mentioned earlier mindfulness and gratitude practice. Mindfulness or meditation practices will help you be able to pull and watch and observe without being sucked into the full drama of it. But not detach, but observe from a different perspective. To also feel, but just to have a different viewpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And I think doing the meditation and gratitude and, just whatever it is, even just, with yoga or working out and just like working out working out your mind, really, it kind of leads you through your subconscious, I find. Like where things will hit you and you can just quickly kind of get through them. And you don't even really notice, like there's lots of things that will happen or come up. I mean, this stuff coming out, the book coming out, and headlines kind of went everywhere this week about this situation with Greg Norrie and I. And this is a really heavy week for me. It's out to the public, and a lot of people are talking about it. And I know he's starting to talk about it. And I think if I hadn't been doing all this meditation and working on myself for the past while, that I would probably be hit really hard this week. But I'm just kind of like, it's going to be fine. It's not cool, but it'll be fine.
What's not cool about it?
It's like I said, it's just really heavy talking about this all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody asking me stuff about it. I know obviously he's not happy about it. But the truth is I'm not happy about it either. I take no pleasure in coming out with the story and having his whole life turned upside down, his family having to go through this. Like that was something I wrestled with for a long time. I even went to a therapist about this before I started writing it. Like when I started realizing I'm going there and I was going to go down this path, I thought, I can't go there because this is going to hurt too many people in his life, in his orbit. That was my first thought.
Your sensibilities about others, it's not something I would have guessed until sitting with you here. Like you have a sensitivity to you about other people and a kindness about speaking the truth. You are not like brash with like, whatever it takes, man. That's not you. No. There's a sensitivity about how you conduct and shape your words to find the most honest way to express what's happening inside of you or to, pull your history forward. I really appreciate how you're doing it. I imagine it's really hard for him too, and so.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And there's a big part. There's a lot of times we forget some of the bad things, right? You can forget how tough things were in the past. And I always go back to, and sometimes people will say, no, don't go there. When I say, he was a really great guy too. And they'll say, oh, don't say that. Like he was, look at all this other stuff. And I go, yeah, but I can't deny, like if I'm being honest, Sum 41 wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't be this band without him. And he had a lot of great stuff. He taught me the structure of writing songs and pointed out how to, he would show me other great songs and say, now your songs, you have these moments that are good, but you just have all these parts and they just kind of go nowhere. And you got one really great part and then you just get off it and you never repeat it again. Look at this song they've got a great chorus and there's a structure, follow this kind of thing. And, he just taught me all these things. And I started writing better songs, and he was the one who helped get us signed, and just, all these things, right? Like there was he noticed a lot of good things. I'd say once the relationship turned the way it did, went down more of a sexual path, and then we had success, and our band went past his band. I felt like there was, And I was also saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have this kind of relationship. I just want to have a professional and friendly relationship. And I was pulling back. That made him angry. And the fact that we had surpassed him, I think, made him jealous of our success. Even though he's our manager.
There's a lot of layers, as to your point.
And things just got very dark for a long time. And he was still our manager, and he was still intertwined in everything. And we still did 4 records together until it just got to a point where it was just so toxic that we all collectively came to a decision to fire him as our manager.
I just want to one more time honor the courage to speak truth. And it's something that this is yesterday, the time of the recording, was Mental Health Day. Mm-hmm. Every day should be a mental health day. But it's celebrated on the calendar once a year, at least in the US. It's a real treat to hear how honest you are and the courage that sits right below that to speak to it. So I want more of that for me. I want more of that for the listener. I want more of that for all of us.
There's a lot you can gain in life when you really look at yourself, honestly. If you can stand figuratively naked in the mirror, and because I don't like to stand naked actually in the mirror, but figuratively in the mirror, and look at all the things that either you're doing well or that you could do better. I know I benefit from that, and it's hard when you can get to a place where a lot of the things or everything you do is really your fault, good and bad. There's always a way you could have navigated yourself out of something. Like when you have that victim mentality of like, well, this is bad in my life because of that. I could say things in my past, my upbringing, my abusive stepfather, or whatever it is, has made me a certain way, and I'm just like an angry person or something like that. But it comes down to the controllables. You can't control what people do or people say or how people act, but you can control how you act and what you do with that and after those situations.
What you just said is pointing to a very technical term called agency. So, that in psychology, that means that you have power to choose, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
And one of the most inspiring kind of writers in psychology and psychologist was Viktor Frankl, which I'm sure you're familiar with, survived the concentration camps and told how. And he pointed to the same very things that you're talking about, which is like, look, when the conditions are deplorable, you got to figure out a way to understand purpose, to understand how to make choices that line up for something bigger than you.
Yeah.
And so as we round kind of the last couple questions here, like, have you thought deeply about your purpose? Like, why are you here? Why is Deryck here? What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Well, I do think about what I want to do with the rest of my life. I don't really think about what my purpose is and why I'm here. And in some ways, I feel like I naturally don't operate from ego. And I feel like in some ways, saying that I have some purpose here on this earth for something feels somewhat that comes from an egotistical point of view of, I just think we're all here. I'm just here I want to enjoy life. I want to work hard and do things that I think are honest, great for myself. And hopefully that can help others. But with music, I've been helped so much with music. I mean, and I hear that from other people, and I don't know how much my music has touched people, because you never know. You can just hope that it has brought some joy to people and people enjoy it.
But you do get the adulation, like, oh my God, you do get that. Like you have some sense funny? That.
I was just talking about this the other day, is I wish that I still haven't gotten to a place, and maybe this is because we spent so many years opening for other bands and trying to prove ourselves, and we had so many ups and downs, and we've been counted out so many times that I've always felt that we're always trying to prove ourselves. And on this final tour that we're doing, and these are sold out big places, and I'm backstage, and I have to remind myself that people came here because they want to be here. I don't have to go out and prove myself that we're a good band. They like us already.
There's this idea in elite sport, which is what got you here isn't going to get you there. And so, the vine that you've been swinging on, actually, to get to the next vine, we got to let go and take a leap. And it's scary. because you operating at a really high level, same with the athletes I'm referring to, and to let go and to do it differently, you don't necessarily know it's going to work out. And I hear you saying that right now, that the model that got you here was, I'm going to show you. And like, you didn't believe in me?
Yeah.
Okay, watch. And I got something to say. And I'm going to grind. I'm going to do it better. And I'm going to get it. And so that chip on your shoulder mentality got you here. And the thing that will get you to the next iteration of how you shape your life is probably not going to be that chip on your shoulder. There's something else.
Maybe. I don't know.
No one does it alone. We need each other.
Yeah.
And it's a very complicated set of conditions when we're in a relationship where we're really trusting and relying on other people to deliver against the vision that we're sharing, the promises that we're making to each other. And so bandmates, teammates, partners in life, there's that intimate connection between people.
Yeah.
And to be in a band for a long time feels hard. It feels really tricky because
it's a marriage to a few different people.
Yeah. And you put all the public attention on it, you put the artistic integrity on it, you put drugs and rock and roll and complicated relationships all surrounding. So do you have any insights about how to do relationships well with people that you want to partner with, whether it's a teammate, somebody at home, or if we're speaking to the band member?
It's hard. I mean, with our band, I think we all have a collective goal. We all love what we do. We love the music. We all grew up together. We all went to school together, but that can also make things difficult because we operate a little bit like a family where when you're that close, you're kind of like brothers. I don't know how to put it, but when you're with your family, you can talk to each other. You can be rude. You can be more rude with each other because you love each other that much and you know that you're going to come back to each other, right? You're not going to leave each other. So, brothers can fight a lot harder sometimes. And I think that's how we've operated in the past. I mean, at this point in our career, everything's all love and peace and respect and understanding. We've gone through periods where we hated each other and weren't speaking and mad at each other for this and that, or some things were big things, some things were small things. And dynamics have been great and bad. When we started out of high school, we only had each other. We didn't have wives or girlfriends and all that kind of stuff. Or the only thing we had was just this one goal, was to succeed and to just, be the best band that we could. So we had this gang mentality. Like you couldn't mess with any one of us or we're all going to jump in. And we all had each other's back for the longest time. And then as you get older and everybody has different needs and different wants in life, your life starts taking you in different directions, and we also start moving to different places, and we're not as connected anymore. And with a band like us, who constantly toured and never stopped working, we started to burn ourselves out, and then tensions grew within the band. So, dynamics got really bad for a good while. I mean, we've done everything that you could. We've done the whole never speaking to each other again, screaming matches backstage, fighting, not fist fighting, but just screaming at each other, saying all the things that you shouldn't say to each other, going through group therapy together, all that kind of stuff. Members quitting, members coming back, it's all that kind of stuff.
And if there's a through line about how to do it well, how to get to the place that you're at now, what would you want the listener to know?
For me, and this is just, I can only really speak for myself, is that I've always been a committed person. I commit to everything that I do, and I committed to the band. I commit to my marriage, and I ride through the ups and downs. Like I said, I always know that nothing lasts forever. Life is just a roller coaster. You're always going to go up and down. And I know when things are bad that the bigger picture is better than what the small picture is right now. So I always commit to it and I stick through it. And I think some of the guys in our band have left and come back. And I can't speak to why they did that or what they were going through internally. But, I think at the end of the day, really, for a band, it really comes down to the love of the music.
Very cool. And you snuck in there that you're trying to be your best, not the best. Is that?
I didn't know I snuck that in there. It's just sort of how I operate, I guess,
Yeah, definitely me too.
I've never tried to be, and I've thought about this. I've never thought about being the biggest or the best. Sometimes I think that I should have. I look back and I go, wow, I've accomplished every single dream I've ever had. Everything that I thought about when I was 13, 14, 15 years old in high school, just dreaming all day, everything, all the bands that I would dream about, all those things, I hit all those things. So if I have any regrets, I just go to myself, why didn't I dream bigger? Why didn't I dream to be the biggest band on the planet? Because it probably would have come true.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I have no idea what it's going to be, but that's the exciting part.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking. And if you do nothing, that's cool too. Like when I say nothing, I mean nothing public. I just really appreciate how you've shaped your history, your current state, and the way you think about the future. And I think that these golden handcuffs that many people would relate to, like I'm really good at this thing, but I don't know what to do without that thing. And so I really respect that you're examining the golden handcuffs as well. And maybe you don't see them as handcuffs, but this idea that you don't have to do just music.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a love vein. It's a love vein for you, but you don't have to just do that.
I don't know what else is out there for me. I don't know what my other interests are because Sum 41 consumes my life. Yeah. And it's been great, but it's been 30 years. And I feel like if I'm ever going to try to do something, I have to just get rid of that out of my life so I can just see if the universe offers me anything else. I don't know what it's going to be. And like you said, it may be nothing or nothing public, but it could be something I do that where nobody's looking, and it's fulfilling. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool.
But I'm ready to see what is out there. I think opportunities will I don't think they're going to be handed to me, but I think life presents opportunities.
And you're ready.
Yeah.
I think you're speaking to a lot of people in that. I'm doing this thing. I've made a living. I'm paying mortgage. I'm paying rents. Like it's working out. But man, I'm not sure I want to keep doing this.
Well, nothing good. I've realized in life that nothing good comes easy. And the hard thing is the scary thing. And everything's scary. Change is scary. So, it's just, you just have to do it because I don't know how to explain it other than that's just the way I operate. It's the things that scare you the most are the most important things you could do.
What a great philosophy. What a great philosophy. What was your first tattoo?
My first tattoo was this 41 that we got. We all have it.
Yeah.
Right here. And, I don't have a lot of tattoos like some of the guys in the band do, but yeah, that was the first tattoo. I think when we got our record deal, we're like, let's go get a tattoo. We'll all get a 41.
And then the most meaningful one?
I think most of my tattoos are meaningful. My most recent is my son's name, and obviously that's pretty meaningful. But yeah, I'm like somebody who gets a tattoo like every 7 years. I don't have that many.
I was talking to an athlete. He's in the NBA, and he says, you can't get a tattoo over the age of 30. That's not allowed. Right. So, but you broke that rule.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I do is break rules.
I appreciate that. And do you have any tats that you're like, I'm not sure that this one should make the list?
Necessarily, because like I said, I don't really have too many tattoos.
Yeah.
Unless there's some hidden ones I forget about. I forget about the ones back here a lot of times. No, I don't really have anything that's bad. What's funny though is sometimes I'm like, I wonder if I would just get them all removed and just start over. Like if that's a thing, like just, clean them all off and then get other ones.
That's cool. Yeah. Blank slate.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you for your time, your sensitivity. Thank you for the openness to explore, the courage to be able to find the right way and the right words to speak truth. It's inspiring.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your body of work as well.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, really appreciate you.
Thank you. This has been cool. Come on.